like to call this meeting to order, please. The agenda has been published. The one thing that we missed on the agenda were the minutes from the last two meetings, which have circulated, the 11-6 meeting and the 12-4 meeting. I'd like a motion to approve those minutes if everyone's had a chance to read them and is good with them. Right? Everyone good? So motion to approve those minutes. Second.
You want me to move? I'll second.
Yeah, second. Thank you.
make it?
Yeah.
I'll second it.
All in favor? Aye. Aye. Good. Okay. Our next meeting will be February the 5th, correct, Alex? That's the first Monday?
Yeah.
Okay. So next meeting will be February 5th. And now that we have all of that housekeeping out of the way, why don't we go to our agenda? And the first item on that agenda, Alex, is?
There's no public hearings or decisions tonight, so under work session, the first subdivision we have on the application. The first subdivision on the work session agenda is RRFACF LLC at 560
Good evening. My name is John Bennett, and I represent the applicant, and Rick Fowler, who is one of the principals, is with me this evening. This application was filed with the village on October 14th, 2022. It's quite a while ago. We submitted a request for the board in February and March of 2023 for the matter to be placed on the board's agenda for discussion. The application was only first discussed on April 20th, 2023, more than 6 months after the application was filed. In November 2nd of 2023, we submitted a revised 7-lot subdivision plan that relocated a proposed agricultural reserve area. In addition, it took into consideration comments made by Dean McNamara, who's the fire marshal. Then by correspondence dated January 12th, 2024, just a few days ago, we submitted revised maps that eliminated the proposed access for lots 3 and 4 from Wickapog and did a bunch of other things, all in response to board comments. So at the end of this meeting, I'm going to ask you to put this on, schedule this for a public hearing. There's quite literally no reason why you can't do that. It's time long due for the public to be heard on this application. It doesn't commit you to a course of action. It just does what you're supposed to do, which is to have the public be heard on this in a reasonable manner. Certainly quicker than 14 months. My calculations are right after the application was first filed. I've never seen anything like it. So let me talk about a couple of things that quite a few things that we've done here. Even though the current code specifically allows for flag lots, and I will tell you that concern for flag lots definitely comes from two things. And there's been a misunderstanding about the fact that flag lots were used in the additional plan. And by the way, I have to remind everybody there's a 12-lot yield on this property, where it's 7 all conforming lots. But the reason that flag lots find disfavor is that a lot of times they allow for greater density, greater lot creation on a yield map, number one, which is not the case here. Number one, because the original yield map just would have been used roads. Number one. And number two, because you have flag lots that, for example, there's some flag lots and lots in Noyak, for example, the flag lots are literally a quarter of a mile long. But none of those ills that this sort of wall that people think has been enacted against flag lots were at all under any reasonable planning analysis present on this property. But it seems to me this flag lots were a bugaboo. So what we did was we went back and redesigned the subdivision in a manner that will not use any flag lots. So, but at the same time, as we've been saying all along, it's the intention of the Fowler family to try to continue to farm most of this property. So this is what we did, and I think it's actually works out great. The idea is to approve the map in this form, and this is a planning tool that is often used when a planning board has a lot that's being developed, and then there's a vacant lot next to it that is not in for subdivision development. The planning boards will come in and have hopefully everyone can see this graphic. The board will come in and have what's called a temporary cul-de-sac at the end of the initial development. And then when a road is continued through, these wings of the cul-de-sac, by means of something called a reverter, disappear. So with the hope, and that's why we used cul-de-sacs, that's why we used flag lots in the original design, so that we wouldn't have to put the road in, much the way this board approved the Halsey subdivision to the west, which again, the Halsey family has filed that map. There's multiple lots there, but they have been able to continue to farm it because there's been no requirement to put the road in. So dealing with the board's, I think, unnecessary aversion to flag lots, even though the town code allows for them, but wanting to move this along, what Rich Warren's people did in conjunction with consultations with my office, and most important, Mr. Fowler, designed this so that the road would be constructed in the first phase. The map would be filed, the road would be constructed in the first phase, giving access to lots 1, 2, 6, and 7, and then sometime in the future, if these other lots wanted to be built out, 5, 4, and 3, or actually 3, 4, 5, 3, 4, and 5 wanted to be built out, the road would be continued, and utilities and the like continued. These reverters would go away, and we would agree to a covenant that said there could be no building permits issued on these northerly lots until such time as this road and all the required drainage were installed first. So, and why are we going through this? Instead of just saying, here's the design and we'll build a road, because the Fowler family wants to, as long as possible, continue to farm this. Look at Mike Bettini's book called Trails of Long Island, or Trails of the East End, and when he is very complimentary to Rick's grandfather about dedicating that amount of property down to the west of here, he notes that this farm is one of the oldest farms in the state of New York, which is why the Fowler family wants to continue to farm it.
Hey, John.
We wish you would embrace that.
John,
Yes.
We've got a tight agenda tonight.
Yes.
And if you don't mind, I can interrupt. The lot plan that you've proposed,
Yes.
we're very happy with. It responded to all the things we asked for. So in your latest filing, it seems as if all the things that most of the things the board asked for were addressed. So there's that easement, right?
That literally fell in our laps, which was great.
Right, that worked out. So
Yeah.
you check the box there. I think all 5 of us, and stop me if I am not speaking.
Stop you.
Well, so I think we have let's listen to what Willis says in a minute, but I think we've got a majority that likes this plan. The real question is,
Right.
what does this reserve area look like? That's the one that is the most concerned. So could you kind of cut to the chase?
Well, we do have
and talk
we
about
do
that
have
reserve area and what the
Steve
profile of that
from
looks like.
Steve
And
from-
then, hang on, and then we'll come back and listen to Willa's concerns with this design.
Steve, and you have to remember, I'm asking you to have a hearing for a sketch plan stage. There's a lot of the work that has to go in here, but we're well past that date. But we did have, because Willa decided that she wanted to have some sort of screening along Fowler. And you gotta remember, first when I looked at it, I was like, oh, that's Wickepaugh, but Fowler actually starts, the street starts to there's an east-west portion of it that starts to the west of the north-south portion of it. So we do have, and this is a conceptual plan, Steve Naroda of Mary's Design is here. So clearly we're willing to have some buffering along the street, even though a typical farmer would want to say, I want every bit of that arable land to be available for agricultural production. I think what's happening here is that what's being misunderstood is this is not merely open space. This is agricultural reserve preservation, which is used for agricultural production. And you cannot find an ag reserve covenant or easement that doesn't allow for structures on it, because agricultural production requires structures. There's no question about it. Now, there has been some mention of the subdivision that Bobby Gianos created across the street from the hospital. I think I'm not alone in the planning community, and certainly not in the agricultural community, by saying that was probably one of the most missed opportunities for agricultural production, preservation of soil that anyone has ever seen, ever. There's not one bit of I remember when that was, not so long ago, when that was a farm. That's all it was. And now all you have is not even a preservation of what I like to call the petting zoo farm, which is, isn't it nice? Everybody drives, oh, we live in the country, the farm, blah, 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 blah. Not even that preservation. So you have this stuff planted out. You had one of the older farms in the state of New York, like this farm. And what did it get turned into? It got turned into a flower basin on one side. Then in the middle, a piece of lawn that no one can get access to. Having said all of that, we don't want this board to repeat that mistake. The planning, in my letter, I showed you the chapter and verse of the master plan and the comprehensive plan update, where preservation of farmland and agriculture is one of the stated goals. That's what we're trying to do here. Can we work on this in the future to try to come up with some of the goals that some of the board members want? I'm not adverse to that. But, for example, you have two buildings here. There's three. Well, there's a house that's pre-existing, and then there are four larger buildings, and then there are two smaller buildings in the westerly parcel. Right off the bat, I said to my client, "Would you be willing to take those two, the L-shaped building and the smaller building on the tip of it, out when these lots are built on?" Sure. But agriculture needs agricultural buildings, and every agricultural reserve has buildings. I don't want a pretty field here. I want agriculture. I'm being very, very direct. So we're willing to talk about some sort of buffers, but the intention is to preserve this in perpetuity for agriculture.
And I don't think anyone on the board has an issue with that.
Okay.
Right? The
So
idea
we
is
could-
if Rick Fowler and his family wants to continue to farm this, we
This
support that.
This reserve area.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think we support that with some caveats that we can get to, but let's.
But that shouldn't hold up a public hearing.
I agree.
Okay.
Willa, did you have a question?
Well, I just have several points because I don't think, I think we're, to some extent, this is moving in the wrong direction, in my opinion. But the current intentions of the applicant are not really relevant to the necessity of covenants and restrictions that actually keep this what I think the board and a lot of the village envisions, which is keeping it in its current open agricultural state so that the village, people in the village can drive by and appreciate what it has been and what the village, used to be, not when it's sold in the future, presumably to someone else, what their vision or what their idea of an ag reserve is, which there's plenty of precedent in the village and in the newspaper and everywhere else that this is a saleable property that when sold to another owner, that owner can try to create, something that is not edible crops, that doesn't continue to farm this property unless there are very significant covenant, requirements placed on this, so that any future owners, any heirs and assigns, anyone who buys this property is bound when it is not farmed anymore, which happens in most of these situations because it's adjacent to a residential development with houses, and people generally often object to the continued farming if it involves certain types of things that might create a nuisance. So you have to consider this and this application and the conditions that we put on it for any future use, not just what a current applicant intends to do in the next few years, because that sets an important precedent. So, when you present a plat that labels this agricultural structures to remain, I don't know that that reflects the intention of the board to preserve this as open green space, although it appears as open green space and an agricultural use. Labeling it as such prevents, doesn't ensure that it's going to remain open and that there's going to be a significant green buffer when you go around that corner, so that you can enjoy that and people bike and walk to the beach and so on. And if you allow these structures, if there's an opening to expand them even a little bit, they can then encroach on the road and there can be big imposing structures on the road. So that's, one point. The second thing is your original plan, which you presented, had a park. And when I read the village code 97-35B1, it's not that you can have a park, it's that you must have a park. And there's a formula related to the number of houses, 100 houses, 5 acres. So if we have 8 houses here, it comes into about half an acre. So there are other provisions of the code that require a natural environmental buffer, 97-39, 97.3 subsection E, that when you convert a non-residential plat into a residential subdivision, you're supposed to have open dedicated space. So I think, it's very important what restrictions are being put on this ag reserve, because an ag reserve has historically been a giant loophole through which you can drive, changes that don't preserve this open land. So I frankly don't understand why the park, which requires a finding by the board that a park, we're talking about a private park, not a public park, it would require a finding by the board that a park is not necessary to a subdivision, which would establish a precedent that we don't need parks in subdivisions. And personally, I feel that we do need parks, especially if there's no bioswale, like for polluted runoff, where there's areas of lawns that are not cultivated and that are not subject to irrigation. So those are a couple of points that I don't think are addressed here. And I just want to remind everyone also that we had asked for greater density, i.e. more lots, so that we could have dedicated green space, and the applicant represented that they don't want greater density, more houses in return for more open space. So the question is, how does this plan guarantee that there's going to be no expansion of these buildings? If the present applicant stops farming them, they'll be raised and they'll be complete open space. And I think that there should be a dedication of a private park, not a public park, that creates a buffer going around that corner for the park that actually is required, unless we make a finding that there should be no park.
Just
if we
the
make that
point.
kind of finding,
Just a quick point is the
Yeah.
inverse. We need to make the finding that the park is warranted.
yeah, I just reread the code. I didn't see it that way.
No,
But I mean, look under the design standards. It says there shall be a park. There shall be a park unless the board finds that there is no need for a park, which would set a precedent that there's no need for a park. And the way they frame it is you should either ask for a park fee or have a physical park. But basically, the problem is that unless there's airtight language in terms of covenant and restrictions, we're allowing a significant subdivision that then does not necessarily have any open green space depending on the next owner and whether they want to try to get a court to allow a greenhouse and sell plants or whatever else.
Well, just
and that's happened over and over.
To that point, and just for clarity, a covenants and restrictions, be them for ag reserves or buffers, they run with the land. So they're applicable to the applicant's heirs and assigns. That's typically the language. So it would not only apply to Mr. Fowler here, it would apply to anyone in perpetuity who would purchase the land. So
if the language states such, but it's the map, the plat is now marked that these buildings are all staying.
But this plat's not finalized, nor is it being recorded. The final plat will be recorded, and the CNRs will be recorded and referenced on the final plat. So, Mr. Bennett has points.
I
Hang on.
I'm sorry. Sorry, Mark.
So,
Sorry.
I wanted to make one more point, which is that we were advised by the village planners that the easement, which I don't know anything about, which was proposed as an alternative, is not actually give access to Phillips Pond.
That's simply incorrect.
And was not a viable alternative, and also is not linked to this application. So you know, also the case law that you cite, that the applicant cites, states that with certain notice, reasonable notice, there would be under the case law access to clean up a pond. I don't know why the future homeowners here wouldn't be in their interest to create some kind of easement. But I mean, we can ask Kathy and we could ask the village advisors, but I thought the discussion was that that was not an alternative easement.
If I can respond to that, please.
Hang on, John.
I think the easement that you're referring to was the driveway easement that's shown on the plan.
Mhm.
Is that the one?
I don't know.
Is it the
1966?
1966?
Let's circle back on the easement thing, because I think, we just got this on Friday. That was the first we'd heard of this easement being identified. I think we all need to, drill down on that easement issue. It seems like it might be a solution. All we asked for earlier was some kind of access to clean up the pond. This may check that box, but we've got to do some more homework on that. But it's a positive development. Willow, was there anything else? Because I'm going to open up to other questions here on the board.
No, I just wanted to make the point that then there's 5 houses, they may be like 10-bedroom houses, they're now on this pond, which many of them are polluted, and the village has an interest in cleaning them up. So I just
Understood.
think that's important, and I don't know how it kind of evaporated.
Understood. Thank you.
You gotta let me respond to some of this stuff because it's half-truths.
Okay, before you
Yes.
respond, let me just say one thing. I think that Willa has some interesting points, but they all fall under the canopy of what the profile of this reserve area looks like is very important to building a majority and moving forward with this as quickly as possible. Those are some concerns, right? But it's all part in the context of what are the specific design aspects of the reserve area and what are the covenant and restrictions. I don't know if we want to talk about that now.
I can talk about that.
But
Because I think for the edification. of the
yeah,
board.
but that's kind of the crux to
Understand.
this thing.
All of that stuff is,
Fair.
you're acting as if, this is not, you're not being asked to put, I'm not asking the secretary to put their signature on a map that's gonna be filed. This is part of the iterative process. We're now at, Kathy, I think correctly, said that she wants to have this sketch plan preliminary final. Is that correct, Kathy? You don't want to go just from sketch plan to final on this one, correct?
So just for the board's edification, in the village code allows us to have kind of 3 tiers, sketch plan being the least formal and binding, preliminary, which is binding to an extent, and then final, which, as the name implies, is final.
Yeah, I think our objective here is to move this to a public hearing on a sketch plan at the next date.
Okay. If that's what you want to do, I will reserve the rest of it for further discussion with the board. That's all I want.
I'd love to hear kind of your thinking on this reserve area.
Excuse me?
I'd love to hear what you were thinking
Oh,
on this reserve.
I continue to be, well, I'll be very direct with you. I just don't understand your concern about the continuing effect of restrictions on this property. I have probably drafted 30 ag reserve documents in my professional career representing owners that subdivided land, and every single one of them says that it shall be binding on the heirs, successors, and assigns. Number one. Number two, and the map will have, as Mr. Borkland stated, even though some people might think it's Mr.
My
Stone.
plaque is incorrect.
Yeah.
For shame.
The map will have reference to the Malibu page numbers on the subdivision as to where that ag reserve document can be found, number one. Number two, as any reasonably knowledgeable real estate lawyer will tell you, notations on a map have the same binding effect as covenants and restrictions, so it's a pure belt and suspenders thing. A notation on the map it's filed in the county clerk's office, and it's binding. We understand there may be some issues about the reserve area, but I don't see any questions about the location of the reserve area. It was changed as per the request of the board. It's a 25% reserve area. As I pointed out, the master plan talks about 20%, talks about the preservation of agricultural space. We did try just to move the discussion down the road, show a planting plan out front, which again, the typical farmer would want to keep every bit of that for arable land, but we're willing to talk about that. But these are discussions that will happen in an iterative process down the road, to the preliminary and the final stages. We have to get to the public. It's literally, and I hate it. I almost hate to say this, because I know when I start, there's a particular lawyer out here who starts talking to the boards about their responsibility, and I sort of cringe when I hear it, because no one likes to hear that. But I will say that it is sort of your responsibility. It is your responsibility to move this forward and put this on.
Oh, I thought you were talking about yourself.
Oh no! It's a combination.
I think I know the homage that you're referring to.
Depends on, Counselor, it depends on the case.
So that stuff can all be talked about. But again, this would not be something that we wouldn't expect to have further dialogue on. But
Yeah, the concern is what would be binding. So if the current applicant is farming this and wants those buildings, then if they're not farming it and there's a subsequent owner, can these buildings be raised? Is that something in a covenant and restriction that the applicant would agree to? So then it's open space that's enjoyed by the village, and you preserve 25% of it, which is less than the town preserves and less than some of the
we're not
adjoining.
in the town, and
Some of the adjoining properties in the village
they're in the
preserve
village.
more of it, the old town.
As Dr. Corman used to say to me in the zoning board of appeals, when I said, in the town, and she would say, John, that's why we're in the village. Okay.
Well, the village should be more.
So
Concerned about-
any other questions on this from other board members? Alan?
Yeah, I appreciate all these arguments, and I'm happy that the younger Mr. Fowler is here. Farming and farming reserves, they can be overruled by loaded votes and everything. I've read every agricultural reserve that you submitted so far. I've read them all, and I understand. I believe that Mr. Fowler is involved in a lot of farming. Not here, across the road is a major, I believe mostly trees he can testify to. It's
Exactly
really,
farming on this parcel.
I understand it's,
Oh.
okay. Across the road in the town, not the village, which we haven't talked to the town yet. I believe we have to, or get there at some point in these proceedings. The town will appear. And the Fowlers are involved in other significant parcels, I am advised. I haven't been to them, nor have I watched their farming of the people that, where the trailers go, where the tractors go, etc. If this parcel here is used for, let's say, farming, which is a broad concept, it's not, lettuce, across the road, like it's going to be what is called in the public, I think, like a tree farm. It's a perfectly logical extension of what I understand for various other reasons is his business. He's a proprietor of consequence in the neighborhood. Tree farming it's fine. If the uses, which he gets older, the uses can change. He may give up tree farming. He may get out of the tree farming business, which is presumably a wonderful business for 20 years, not 50, whatever it is. I want to deal in the near term with what are the larger interests of, shall I say, Fowler Enterprises.
Typically, what a ag reserve document says is agriculture as defined in section 301 of the Ag and Markets Law.
I know that. I would like to preserve it for his purposes. I'll personify it.
Well, you have to preserve it for agriculture.
I do not have to do it for.
Yeah, you sort of do now.
Well, your argument is sort of, but it's from a
Well, actually, what I'm saying, let me
from
be
a
crystal clear.
planning point
You
of
have to do
view.
that.
No, from a planning point of view. If you don't grow kumquats and you can only grow trees, it's a slippery slope. But
Well, if you have uses that you find problematic, they can be part of the discussion. I don't have any problem with that.
But I have a concern, which is presumably council. If it needs to be off record, I will take you and council. I don't think we have real disclosure. Who owns what parcels? Which
I would caution against discussion of parcels outside of the one
That's what I
under
asked you.
review. But that being said, in just a very
there's
brief,
several parcels. They've
No.
been,
Alan, it's one parcel right now,
it's only one large tax lot, correct?
Yeah.
One SETM.
right? Yeah, it's one large
Well,
tax
yeah.
lot. Yeah.
Okay, if the ownership is Ricky, it's fine. If the ownership has been, the Fowlers have been around for a long time, ownership of different parcels. I'd like to know
It's this
privately, off record, if some point, I'll talk
It's
to
this
Richard
nucle-
Warren or
it's-
something.
Ricky and your brother, right?
Well,
What's the-
ownership is
what's-
public
What's
record.
the plan?
Yeah, it's Ricky. Despite the fact that
Hey.
the whole reason LLCs and in Spain they call it an anonymous society,
Yeah, I understand.
but we have no problem letting it's Ricky
Yeah.
and his brother.
Good. If all of this land is ownership, directly or indirectly with tax, all that sort of stuff, is Ricky and his brother, that's an answer to one of the questions. Ownership across the road is the same, partly developed by the town with their regulations. Those lots are being used for tree farm. It's wonderful stuff.
I caution against us getting too far into the reeds on properties outside of the one under review.
Well, we
Okay,
just talked about an
I respect
easement on
your
a
question.
property not under review.
Because that was
Concerns
germane to a
about
different point
environmental-
Yeah.
You
in
can't-
terms
you
of-
can't bind an easement on a
and
different
I just-
property.
all I want to
Let me
say.
talk about that point. Let me talk.
Well,
about
that's a
that.
recorded
Let
and
me-
it benefits
all I
the
want is
village. So
Let me talk about. I want to talk about that
Information.
point.
Just
The
information.
easement that is
Information.
on the Halsey property was an easement that a Halsey family member gave to another Halsey family member, and
Yep.
then that family member gave it to the village. And the easement, I don't know how anyone can say that it doesn't go to the pond. The specific meets and bounds description in the easement, which I gave you, says it goes to the pond.
and I did review those.
So I don't know what anyone was talking about.
Have you
with that.
have seen a
And
map?
Mr. I'm sorry, Mr. Halsey has said that the village has routinely, he'll wake up one morning and he'll see village vehicles going down there. So the fact that we have solved the concern about access to
How does that solve it? Are
That's a
you gonna
different
link
answer.
it in this application?
no,
and
there's
send
no need
It-
to.
It-
Well, then it hasn't.
Well, no, just to put it into
Sure, one at a time, please. One at a time. One at a time. Alan.
Help me, please.
John, that's not my question. Yeah, access to the pond is a separate topic. I understand that. I just am asking, with council's warning, is not routinely done or stuff outside of the confines of the village. All I was saying is, how can I get information? Maybe I can take Ricky out for a drink or take his brother out.
I would caution against communication outside of our capacity as the board.
Because maybe
Knowledge of, we want this, our duty, as you caution,
Yeah.
is to have a decision
Mhm.
which is part of a series of other decisions
Mhm.
for use,
Mhm.
that represents the responsible number of items that are of concern to the village and the people in the village with the plan. The Fowlers they are very active other than just in the village. And I want to know
Okay.
what's the operation. I know a little bit about, because I've driven around and looked at it across the road. Hey, they've been doing a lot of stuff.
Alan,
just want knowledge of
the town of South, this would never happen, but the
who the
town of
Fowlers.
Southampton could come in and rezone that for high-rise
Yep.
residential development.
Understand.
And it wouldn't have, to use an extreme example, and your inquiry on it, what's going across the street, wouldn't be germane. The only thing that the town is going to say on this is under the general municipal law, since it's within 500 feet of a village boundary, it will get referred to the town. And if history is any indication, like the Suffolk County Planning Commission, they're gonna come back and say local determination.
I'm
'Cause it's-
I'm not worried about what you're worried about. I just question was knowledge of who are the Fowlers. Here they got brothers and a wonderful wife and descendants. People have died ahead of schedule as far as I'm concerned. Thank God Ricky's in charge. He's doing a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
I'm just saying I'd like to get knowledge of what is the farming business of the Fowlers, because it's irrelevant to what is the residual of what we approved to continue. And we'd like to continue as farming.
Okay, as I
Farming-
say,
farming is
my
tree
response
growing.
would be, if
I'd
there are
like
any
to have
uses,
grow every tree.
if there are
grow.
any uses that are problematic to you, we can make that part of the discussion. And
Okay.
that's
Just for if I may.
Yep.
Just by way of example, and to give the board some comfort with the how an agricultural easement works, it can expressly say row crops are allowed, animal husbandry is prohibited, and an added layer is that local zoning. I'm almost certain that down here you can't have a pig slaughterhouse and a
Well,
meat
other things in
farm.
terms of structures, you know, as Will has said, you know,
Yes.
crowding the road, the fact
Yes.
that this is the agricultural reserve does not strip the required zoning setbacks.
So
I still have front yard requirements.
In short, a CNR would be a document tailor-made to what the applicant and this board agree, and it would be binding on the heirs and assigns of Mr. Fowler.
But
Got it.
there's no willingness to put the park back that is in the village code that
Okay.
that is related to the number of houses and that translates to about half an acre, so that we can have a green buffer that no future owner can ever come in and use the ag reserve loophole.
So, Will, I appreciate the direction, but I don't want to use this as a one-off negotiation session. I think we want to view this in context of an entire plan for this green space. And I think I heard you loud and clear as to what your concerns are, and you know we're going to try and work that into a plan that can get a majority of vote here for what that green space is going to look like in the future, and we'll just let that process work its way through. Do you have a question?
Yes, I do. I think, Mr. Bennett, what you're hearing is that we feel very responsible to do the right thing with this very special parcel of property that the Fowlers have had forever, and we appreciate it and we love it, and we're sort of sorry to see it go, because just knowing that such a beautiful track was there. But be that as it may, we're moving forward, and I just think that you have to understand, and I think you do, because you are on the other side of so many of these agricultural reserve lawsuits where people are interpreting it differently, and what someone was hoping to keep more rural is now changing into something that requires multiple homes and 3 bedrooms. And so people are afraid of the loopholes.
Well, what are the
And-
concerns though? Because
Well,
we
just-
can meet those.
Right,
Yeah.
so that would be
That's fine.
important,
Mhm, that's
that
fine.
whatever document, whatever, we
It's called an ag reserve
draft,
document, yeah.
those teeth
Right.
stick, because no one wants to see this change and become something that you just read 27 and the other online, you'll read a lot about the ag reserves become a loophole, as Willa mentioned. We are charged with making sure that doesn't happen, and at the same time being fair to the Fowlers, but also in perpetuity to try and preserve a beautiful green vista when you drive down Wickapog and turn on Fowler. This is very important to everyone. So we're trying to balance things. We're trying to put it on the record so that we understand and I think that's what Alan was trying to say, is he wanted to understand more about your family because he wants it to stay the way it has been and not fall prey to, not 10 years from now, but perhaps 50 or 90 when we're not here, and become something that nobody wanted it to become.
Well, it should give you great comfort. The typical ag reserve documents are drafted pursuant to and with specific reference to Section 247 of the General Municipal Law. And 247 of the General Municipal Law states, in so many words, that it is effectively impossible to alienate any of the restrictions that are in that document. So, for example, the town has very express language in it, but we don't have a problem with it either. For example, in the town, any document that's generated under 247 of the General Municipal Law, in order to change, alienate any of it, you have to have the town board, and this is mirrors the state law, has to vote unanimously to allow that happen, and then it has to go to a permissive referendum where it's approved by 2/3 of the voters, to even ask to change any part of the document. And if anyone, unfortunately in this country, if anyone can find any election where 66% of people have voted one way and 33% have voted another way, I say that just to let you know that this is part of the process. We understand it. We'll talk about the language, but I do have to remind everybody there's a 15-lot yield subdivision. There are 7 lots now. One of the reasons
15 year would have provided more of a
Excuse me?
but if we had more properties, it would allow for a larger park, private, but a green space. That's my understanding. So this
the village
doesn't.
With the
the
finding.
village code
We'd
itself.
have to make a
with the
finding.
finding.
The master plan itself asks for 20%. We have 25. Number one.
Yep.
Number two, I haven't found a recent subdivision where the planning board wanted a park as opposed to a park fee, and I'll tell you why. There's an attorney general's opinion or a controller's opinion that says you can take that park fee money and you don't have to buy other property for a park with the park fee in lieu of the park fee. You can use it to maintain existing parks. So municipalities find it very convenient to
Not
say.
anymore, because the park fee was just struck down by a local.
That
board.
there's
that's
we
not
need to
true.
draw a distinction. So park fees are a creature of the state statute, of the state village law. Villages and towns and cities can require money in lieu of a park.
That was
The amount and the iteration and the way in which Southampton Village required it has been vitiated by a court. That's a story for a different day.
No, the court didn't like the language in the village code of Southampton and struck down the park fee that was imposed by the village for the latch development.
Correct.
Right,
Yes,
so.
But the state law remains and enables
And they
us.
said that the village code was insufficient in terms of the language and could not be used. Therefore, this board, it would be imprudent to have a park fee, and the law firms here were involved in that case. To say to ask for a park fee when a park fee was just struck down.
Okay.
Park
and
fees still
the
exist.
applicant- I'm
Fees
speaking,
are in the
actually.
state.
May I
Yeah,
finish
hang on,
speaking?
hang on.
May I finish speaking? Because you're
Well,
taking up a lot
you're
of
speaking
airtime.
inaccurately.
No, I actually read that case, and that's,
Oh,
and
okay.
that's
not
a
well enough.
John,
binding
please.
legal
I can
decision.
provide clarity if you'd like.
Hang on, but one at a time here, folks. Go ahead, Willa.
Okay, well, a park fee is not a prudent way to go forward unless the code is looked at in the village and revised so that it would be enforced. So therefore, the code talks about asking for a park, and there's a formula, and you had a park, and no future applicant can go to a court and say, take away this park. So that would give some modicum of protection for open space in a green belt that goes around that corner. If you label it a park, it's a private park. We can't play ball on it. It's for the enjoyment of the people who inhabit the subdivision, and that is part of the village code in multiple sections. So that's where we are with parks and park fees.
I think we're also uncomfortable with the ag reserve loopholes that you're in litigation on this lot. I think people change it, and we don't
There are
have,
no loopholes in these laws.
well,
There
people
are
want to
people-
expand the
there are-
housing.
No, I'm extremely aware of what happened in
Right,
the case.
you
of
are,
Bridgewater.
you're the expert,
I'm
I think,
extremely
in it,
aware of
but-
what happened
Yeah.
in the case.
Yeah,
I'm extremely aware of what happened in the case. And not surprisingly, that case is a case where 4 people bought property that when I was a kid was all farmland, have houses on them, have very extensive houses on them, and did not read the document, which amongst other things told them is farming going to happen here, dust happens, pesticides, insecticides, rodenticides are applied. These are people who moved to an area that had a farm, and now, oh my God, there's an active farm there. We didn't think that someone was going to actually farm this farmland. So I'm very aware of what has gone on here. And the last time Mr. Bragman, who is their lawyer, started going on and on about what his interpretation of was the law, the planning board counsel told him to sit down and be quiet because he was spinning mistruths. So I don't want to
Just
go
saying,
there,
we're
but
just-
you know, it's not loopholes.
Do you
It's,
have any questions? Okay.
just want a public hearing.
Yeah,
Okay.
so let me just summarize. I think what I'm hearing is there is support for kind of this general plan, which we're really happy with. You know, the way it's laid out, we really like that. It looks like we've got all the things we asked for in previous meetings. Looks like we have a potential answer. We just have to close the loop on the easement access, so that's good. The real focus here and what we should continue to think about is what the profile of this reserve area looks like.
Understand.
And the concerns, look, the fact we want the Fowlers to continue to farm this. We don't want to get in the way of that, right? So that's our driving mantra
appreciate that.
here. Always part of when we considered this, very early on, we determined that it's very important to the planning board what this space looks like as you drive by on Wickapog and as you go down Fowler Street. So that's going to be a key focus of ours, what that space looks like. Is it a land between Wickapog and the barns? Is it landscaped, right? What's that landscaping look like? Does that go just between between the adjacent property on the west and the little cottage there? Does it stop at the cottage and pick up on the other side? These are all things we're considering. In order to maximize that view, we also had a question as to whether, I think there are 3 access driveways to the operations here. Would you consider closing 1 or 2 of those access driveways to expand that viewscape as you're going by on Wickapog? So if you look at your landscape plan there, the western driveway, right? Could you close that one because?
Again, these are all things,
Right.
Mark, that can be talked about.
Yeah, that's why I bring it up, just so you know what's on
thank
our
you.
radar
I
screen.
understand.
Or could you close that one and the next one down and just use the one off Fowler? Or, is there some iteration of that would work?
Probably for circulation.
Yeah, but the priority one I think for us is the one on your right, my left, that one, right? Because that's the view.
westerly one.
Yeah, that's where you see it going by.
We can talk about
And then the other big concern is, all right, when Mr. Fowler and his family stop farming this, right? What happens to
Well,
this?
another farming family will buy it.
Right, and then what does it look like then? And that's all part of the covenant and restrictions component of this discussion. So
That's all. We're not saying. Obviously, this is part of the dialogue. We gave you a planting plan.
I'm
and
just
we're
trying to
willing talk
summarize here,
about it.
John. I just want to let you. I'm just trying to summarize and
Well,
let
you've
you
said it
know
all along. Yeah.
what we need to do to build a strong consensus for this project. Did I leave anything out on that?
Yep, you got some,
I think we just also have to be
What happens
concerned
off
about
the
if a
farm?
non-farm family, private individual who wants to change this property completely and just have a giant greenhouse or just have a llama farm or whatever else. We have to make sure that that doesn't happen such that the buildings expand even a little bit, or we have to ensure that they're raised so that that's the only way. And I think back to the park, there should be something marked park with a little p.
Okay.
So it's a private park because the code says that in return for granting subdivision, environmental factors and parks and green belts and easements and all that good stuff should be asked for.
Yeah. So
So I
that's,
think this is the time to ask for it.
Yes.
But I don't feel like there's answers as to.
so that's on the list. That's one of the things we got to discuss. And I think, that park, small P park concept is what I was just describing to you between the western border and the cottage. Is there a little strip there
Okay.
that is a park, it's landscape, whatever you want to call it.
I
right?
just,
But
it's very
I'm
important.
just trying to give a review of a checklist of things that we've got to answer to move forward on this.
What's frustrating for me, however, is there's between the ag reserve area and this full buffer down by the water, there's almost 40% of this is going to be protected from any sort of residential development. The 12 lot yield, we're 7 here. The buffer on the adjoining subdivision, which was a 2 lot subdivision here, the buffer that the planning board required was 20 feet. We're proposing a 125 foot setback for landscaping on here. I'm sort of, as Rich Warren was in here a couple months ago, I'm sort of asking for the thank you. This is an extremely sensitive plan, which it's not easy to do. Let me finish. It's not easy to do. It has really, in a very thoughtful way, consistent with the law and consistent with practice, not only of this board, but of East End boards in general, balance some very, very, very significant issues. Wetland setback, preservation of agricultural reserve, minimizing lot by density. The fact that somebody said, take more lots, if I put more lots on here, I wouldn't be giving back more than the 25% open space I'm giving. Your master plan says give you 20.
We
So
all said we want more lots. We would
I-
like
you
a
know, I can't-
cluster subdivision.
I don't
in
think you
return
want
for
to be on record as an
dedicated
East End planning board telling a developer, we want more lots, because
think we
that would be
do.
unique.
Well,
You
as just
probably
for a
are
point of
wrong.
law, we cannot demand a cluster subdivision in the village.
We
That has to
asked
be on
for-
the volition of the applicant.
Okay, we asked the applicant, would they consider going back to greater density in return for dedicated park space?
I
With
think
the
you would
idea that that is a better outcome for the village because there's more protected green space.
And there's-
Protected by something that's not called an ag reserve with all of the legal implications of being able to change that, but that is
Change it how?
dedicated green
Change it
space.
how? Tell me how.
Just-
Change it how?
Sean, there's,
Change
okay,
it how? You make these
Cluster-
statements that are absolutely incorrect.
cluster
Change it
developments
how?
are the state of the art of subdivisions.
Not when
and
you
what
have 7
municipalities would
lots
like
that
because they
meet the
are in
code and
return
provide the
All right,
open
look,
space.
we're not
You
going.
spent 30 minutes talking about how an ag reserve can be amended in the future and must require buildings, and we
I
must
told
be
you
able
how
to allow
impossible
those
it was
to be
legally to do it.
expanded.
You
You
hear
have
what you
multiple
want to
cases.
hear, Willa.
Excuse me.
And you should educate yourself more
Okay.
about the planning process.
Okay, I think I am
You shouldn't
educated
just
about
talk
the
out
planning
of your
process.
Listen, you know
Very
what?
good at doing it.
And you're a good
Ta-
advocate for your client, but this is a collaborative process.
Hang on a second, okay? We're not going to argue this now, all right? I think all the points have been. I thought I said what you asked us to say at the beginning of this meeting. We appreciate how this has evolved. Thank you. If you didn't hear that,
Thank you.
I thought I was.
We thank you, but then there are all these other.
Well, look, we're trying to get this across the finish line because we all want this to work for the Fowlers,
Thank you.
right? And we're trying to get it. So we're trying to be very open and work with you. But it's got to work for you guys. It's also got to work for the village and the planning
and I
board.
think
And
it
we're
does.
trying to do that. And we're trying to clearly communicate what are the roadblocks moving forward. Okay. And
So, Mark, tell me
And what-
something that I haven't heard.
I-
And look what we've done. You had a problem with flag lots. We changed that. You had a problem with the location of the ag reserve. We changed that. You had a problem with access to the pond. We
John,
demonstrated that there's an
go
existing
back and look
easement.
at the video. I think I was very clear about it when I summarized at the last meeting. Was we still need to understand what this green space that you've designated looks like, the specifics. We've never talked about that before. We've been very clear about that the whole time.
No,
We've got to
haven't.
get the.
That's why we gave you some
need-
planting plan.
We need we just got that on Friday, and that may not be all the way there. But rather than beat this to death, what I'd like to do is make a motion to move this to a public sketch plan hearing at our next meeting.
Which would be February.
Yes.
Sketch plan.
Objection.
I'm sorry, there's a noticing requirement.
We need 10, how many days?
I just want to confirm that we would have enough time to do that.
Mhm.
Yeah, we do not. So it's
So-
20 days from tomorrow is the next, and you need 21 days for the mailing, I'm sorry. So that would be March 4th is the next meeting after that, Alex?
Sketch plan
Correct,
hearing?
because of the President's Day holiday.
Sorry. Be the bearer
We need
of that.
21 days,
You
and
need
that's
21 days.
including the poster and the mailing.
The poster is 10 days prior.
Mhm.
The mailing, and there's 2 separate mailings, not less than 21 calendar days preceding the day. So,
That's the best I can do.
Right,
That is what it
can't
is.
change that.
So a motion to move it to the March meeting, which is the first available meeting to meet the notice requirements. Second,
Okay, I'll be on the phone with JetBlue, seeing if I can get a flight back from Florida.
is there a second
March
for that?
4th is the date.
March 4th. Second,
I'll second.
all in favor?
This
Thank you,
Yep.
hearing on March 4th.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
thank you,
All right. Rick, thank you. John, thank you.
thank you,
Um,
thank you.
What's next? What's,
An adjournment, and then you have,
Do you want
what's
to
next
address
as
the
well.
adjournment?
No.
what's next on the agenda?
Don't you have an adjournment request, and then you have one of mine?
The next one I have on the agenda is 783 Hill Street. Was there a request to adjourn that? I didn't see it in the file, John. I'm sorry.
Speaking for somebody.
I wasn't sure if you were planning to present on that tonight.
Oh, is this, no, I have the next one, I'm on.
Is anyone here on 7?
Oh, no, we'll.
783.
We'll
Let me talk
It,
about that.
that used to have your name on it.
The,
783 Hill
the
Street.
principal passed away.
Yeah, I know.
So,
Suddenly.
I'm just conferring with the family. It may very well be, hopefully next time I'll have a withdrawal without prejudice, request.
Okay, so, John, we need to motion to adjourn that to the.
Yes, let's
next
do a
meeting.
motion to adjourn that to the next
So
meeting.
motion to adjourn 783
His
Hill
daughter,
Street.
his daughter
Daughter.
seemed to me, I've talked to her at great length
Okay.
all the time.
Okay.
His death was a great surprise. He was younger than me. He perished
Well,
suddenly.
he was his age going on about half his age. Yeah, so it was a surprise, yeah.
He perished suddenly. It was a great surprise. I came back from it. I've talked to his daughter, and she no indication it was moving forward. I talked to his son, who came up from Florida.
We'll probably just adjourn, we'll probably just withdraw it without prejudice. That's probably where it's gonna be.
So a motion to adjourn 783 Hill Street to our next meeting on February 5th.
I'll move that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Alex, what's next?
That's Connemara's.
Yes, Connemara. It's a lot line amendment. Is the next work session review under subdivision review.
Yeah.
And this is 52 First Neck Lane and 50 First Neck Lane.
All right, John.
I'm
the
gonna pass
stage
this
is
back to
yours
John.
again.
So, my client controls a parcel that's improved by a single-family residence on First Neck Lane, and is also controls the parcel, is a 3-acre parcel behind, which was created before some of the language in the village code regarding flag lot creation. This is what I'm going to ask you to adjourn, but I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do. I think that the interpretation that I'm taking too much away from large lot and making it non-conforming is faulty. So I'm going to meet with the building inspector and try to convince him of the way that I look at it. Absent that, I am going to go to the Zoning Board of Appeals and ask for what I think is the proper interpretation, or in lieu of that, a variance.
Yeah.
I think this makes a lot of sense. You've got a lot that has a house on it that's significantly undersized, and I want to grab some of this much larger lot and grab something onto it, but still leave a large portion of lot 2 the way it is. I think it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, understood.
And the planning board, the zoning board of appeals is probably going to ask you for your opinion on it. The zoning board of appeals, if I can't convince the building inspector to see things my way. So I think I would ask you, when the zoning board refers it to you, and hopefully they will, as they should, and Alex, I think that they should, because it's a subdivision, so that you would be supportive of this. The other thing that I have to say is, I think this reference, with all deference, Kathy, this reference to the Community Preservation Fund in the staff report should be deleted. That belongs nowhere in a report on a subdivision. I litigated a case for Grobau versus the town of Southampton, index number 93-15993, in which, as part of a land use application, the town took into consideration the fact that the town was negotiating for acquisition of the property, and the judge was not happy.
Yeah, understood.
So I would ask for that to be stricken. Whether or not the town is interested in acquiring the property has no business being in a report on a lot line
Yeah,
modification.
it's irrelevant to our consideration.
That's all I'm saying.
So a couple of things. What we were going to tell you on this one was there's not really anything we can do.
Not right now, no.
Until there's a variance.
Absolutely.
But the one
Either a
question,
variance or a
the one
determination.
question we have is help us. So if this does come back, or the zoning board of appeals asks us our view, help us to understand why we would support a conforming lot and a non-conforming lot being split to two non-conforming lots.
Because it brings as a whole, it brings it much more into conformity with zoning. You've got a lot that's right now, forgive me, what's
The back lot's like
Yeah, the
156,000.
back lot's 155,
Right,
and the front lot's 40,000
right, in a
in a
R1,
3-acre zone.
in an R120.
R120 zone.
Yeah,
So it makes a lot of sense to have that.
and that back lot, because it's a flag lot, needs to be larger than 120, right?
Yeah, but it's interesting. It needs to be, there's two things. It needs to be, it takes a little of being here when those sections came out of the code. Those sections came out of the code to prohibit the creation of flag lots in certain areas. They wanted a maximum. They wanted a larger amount. I don't have a problem with excluding the flagpole. I still make it, but what they're saying is this has to be 150 to be a flag lot. And my contention is those are design standards for in futuro for a new flag lot, not an existing flag lot. So, and that's what I'm going to try to convince Chris of, and he'll either agree with me or he won't.
Yep.
And if he doesn't agree with me, I'm going to go to the Zoning Board of Appeals for an interpretation or in lieu of that, a variance. But I think where you have a 40,000 square foot lot in a 3-acre zone, it wants to be two larger lots.
Yeah,
That's all.
understood. Okay.
And what's helped me also is where is the development on this? Where is the development on this lot going to go? It's going to go here.
Yeah.
Number one, and number two, maybe from a point of view of what can be done on this lot, maybe you want to steal some of the square footage and give it to this lot, because guess what? The house gets smaller on this lot because your GFA is governed by the square footage. So I think there are a lot of reasons why it makes sense.
Understood.
But
All right.
I'll save that for another day.
We look forward to your return.
Can I just
Do
ask
Do
something?
we have a date certain that we want to adjourn that to?
So a motion to adjourn this until the next meeting, or?
Will you
Did
need
I-
more time though
Kathy
to
wanted to-
go
Oh,
through?
sorry,
If I-
Kathy.
if I need it-
Hang on a second. Kathy had a question.
So I just wanted to ask council if we should strike that part from the memo, then we will read.
I would suggest so.
Okay.
I would suggest so.
That was my first question. The second is under secra. I didn't see an EAF, and you're going to need that
Type 2
at some
action.
point.
It's a lot line modification. It's type 2 action. I'm not creating any lots. How is this not a type 2 action?
Can you find the section of part 617.5 for me?
I mean, if you want a short form EAF, I guess I'll give you a short form.
It would be an unlisted action. I agree. I just
don't
didn't.
think
I
it's
couldn't
unlisted
find.
action.
I couldn't find a type 2 action that matched this. So
How could this be anything other than a type 2 action? I'm not creating any lots. I'm not.
I can review that also. Mr. Bennett, if you'd like to put in
Yeah.
a letter to the file.
Well, if it's okay, John and I will talk, and if at
That's
the end
fine.
of the
That's fine with me.
conversation you think needs an EAF, we'll put it in.
Okay. So
Thank
when
Is
do
that
you,
okay with you, Captain? Is that okay?
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
I don't mean that sarcastic. Sounds sarcastic.
Really?
It's not. I just want to
Okay.
make sure
Yeah.
if John.
No, that's fine. I did look at the type 2 list. I didn't find anything specific, and sometimes it's, a matter of interpretation. This wouldn't rise to the level of an EIS, of course, so that's where we look at the type 2 from the.
Well, I'll tell you right now, if all you need is a short form, that's easy.
Okay, why don't you guys talk?
Okay.
Okay, we can discuss secret
When do you
coordination.
want to adjourn this?
Can you put it on? Put just the next meeting. Well, what's that? March 4th
Feb.
meeting.
5th is the next one?
February 5th and March 4th. Put it on for the 4th.
Okay, motion.
Also on for March.
Yeah, a motion to adjourn the Connemara to March
Because I have
4th,
to be here on the
please.
4th anyway.
Second,
Second.
Willa, all in favor?
Aye. Thanks. a lot,
Opposed?
folks.
Good, thank you. What's next, Alex?
Good night.
Good night.
So it looks like next, that concludes subdivision reviews and lot line amendments under work sessions for site plan review. The first one we have is 865 Merrick Holdings LLC at 22 Windmill Lane. We had a new submission, I believe that was dated November 30th, that the board discussed a little bit at the last meeting. And so now we're here to continue that conversation.
Okay.
Is someone here to represent the applicant?
No.
Maybe we want to recall this one in case they're running a little bit late.
Okay, we'll recall this one. What's the next one?
The next one I have here is another site plan review for Brian Kelly at 2030 County Road 39A.
Okay,
This was for parking lots that had been constructed without a building permit on County Road 39A.
Stephen Rhoda with Aris Design. I believe that someone's joining via Zoom, if it's possible.
Your name, Steve, what?
Naroda with Aris Design. Someone's joining via Zoom to open up the meeting.
Lynn Kelly?
Well, it's Fact, Matt Henry for Fact, consultant.
Hello, I am here.
okay.
Not sure if you can hear me.
Matt, we can hear you. We can't
very
see you,
good.
but we can hear you.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you for this opportunity of putting together something that we can join remotely. It doesn't exist everywhere, so much appreciated. It's Matthew Henry, Fact Construction Estimating and Administrative Services. We are the applicants, the original applicants that submitted and then received a response from the village through Nelson, Pope, and Borges. And as a result, we engaged Aries Design. Steve Naroda was with you and present there, along with Landro Engineering and Twin Forks Survey. As we went through, as the village is and Nelson, Pope, and Borges are, everything was thoroughly explained, and we believe we hit on most all the points necessary. We did find that there were some existing conditions and inspection of the site that the client, Brian Kelly, would like to maintain that would serve the purpose for some of the village requirements. However, he's also aware, Brian Kelly, that he will need to rip up parts of the parking lot to comply with some of the engineering requirements for capturing the water and the dry wells and so on. In addition, there was a request for certain items to be depicted on the survey with setbacks and zoning concerns. That's been addressed as well. So, with that, I just wanted to let you know we're here. We did see things through, so we thought, and the ultimate objective is just to have the client have an application to build a permit that would be then seen through, inspected properly, and closed out. Steve Naroda from Aries is there to discuss some of the things that we discovered on site, which we hope can remain and stay as part of the parcel. So, Steve, I'll pass it on to you if you'd like.
Steve Naroda with Aris Design. So we were responding to the report, Kathy, that you put together, and mainly this is an existing conditions plan at this point. We want to understand what was there, to see what was compliant with what village code, and maybe what's outside of that, and we want to hear from you as far as what you needed to go forward with this.
Okay, so what was the biggest issue had to do with where the zoning boundary landed on that westernmost parcel that comes down. And because it was split zone between the residential zoning district along Aldrich Lane, there was a transitional yard buffer that's required along that border, which basically is the rest of the parking lot, right? So really, this board is kind of in a place where they can't make a decision on the site plan until there's some zoning relief, and that could possibly occur with the you can move the zoning boundary up to 50 feet, so that will help, but you would still have to have some kind of a transitional yard along there. So I know that you have the buffering vegetation along both of those lines, and that's actually along the southern line on the eastern parking lot as well. There's a buffer along there and a solid fence, but there's not the 50 feet that's actually required by code. So I mean, that's why you have zoning boards. There's definitely constraints here that you can't meet, and but again, this was done, of course, without site plan approval. So there may be an opportunity in the newer parking lot to increase the buffer. You might not need all of that area for the aisle between the two rows of parking. You might be able to squeeze in some more buffering vegetation, and also that would help out with the drainage calculations as well. I do know you're proposing a new dry well in there. And then there was a comment, I did show this to the village engineer about the ponding, the method of demonstrating that you're not going to have off-site runoff by having the curbing, and that would allow for the ponding for the additional 1 inch. He had some questions about that, so I can send those to you. Okay. So, but I think at this point, the next step is to make an application to the zoning board.
And roads too, right? Do you want to?
Oh, yes, yeah. So this is, hadn't had the opportunity to be reviewed as a site plan application, and under normal circumstances, you would refer this to the Suffolk County DPW. So that would be something that we would want to see as well, because they may have some requirements for the ingress and egress into this site.
Sure.
It's a tough site to get in and out of.
Yeah. Okay. Yes, we wanted to hear from you first before we started coming up with plans. Or we want to know what we're working.
Yeah, there's not much we can do until the variances are dealt with, and then we can look at it seriously. But that's a good summary of everything that, all the boxes that need to be checked before this can move forward with the planning board.
Sure.
Okay.
Thank you very much for that. And if I may, do we receive a sort of, with what Kathy said, a written description of what some of that criteria that needs to be met? And do we use that with zoning? Or do we just move forward with a separate zoning application and not have something from the village with respect to what's been required?
Well, so I can say that I do have the comments written up as a draft memo, and I can circulate that this week. But as far as the application to the zoning board, that would stand on its own. And you might, consider what mitigation that you're going to provide as part of that application.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, perfect.
For the zoning board, you'll apply through the building department, and you'll get a letter of denial from the building inspector outlining the ways in which it doesn't meet code. There's a specific type of variance for split zone properties for extending that property line that you'll apply for, in addition to whatever relief you need for those transitional yards. So those will need to get dimensioned on the plans. And as you probably know, one of the zoning board's requirements is to grant the minimum relief necessary. So they'll want to see that we're maximizing those buffers to the maximum extent practical given the size of the property.
And is it true that there's no additional lighting that's proposed in the parking lot?
No, there's no additional lighting. There's only lighting on the building.
On the buildings, okay. So that's not changing. So it's the applicant that has to, demonstrate or is subject to the village requirements for dark skies. So, I wouldn't recommend that you need to do any more review of that. But it's just, it's the owner's responsibility to make sure you
wouldn't
conform.
recommend to hold on that for now?
I don't think that there's any reason to go further with it as long as it is compliant. So, I haven't been there at night to see if it looks like there's any kind of, fugitive lighting onto the property lines.
Right.
But you didn't, if there's no changes, it's like, I don't know. How far do you go with that?
When do you want to adjourn this to? When would you like to come back?
Matthew, would you want to let us know what you're thinking?
Yeah, I think we're past, I heard that there may be a hearing from the earlier review that in March. I think we may be past March just because of proper preparation. Although we are going to submit to zoning, I'm expecting that turnaround to be, to take some time for their response to it as well. And if we need to come back with zoning, I think we're past March into April.
So the first meeting in April, I think, is April 1st, right, Alex? Yeah.
Yeah, the first Monday.
In April is April 1st. So you want to put it on the agenda
Sure.
for April 1st. So motion to.
Yes, let's do, thank you for that offer and thank you for asking. Let's do that for April 1st. And if we find and hear that the docket, either with zoning or any of our consultants push us beyond that, we'll be sure to let Alex know.
Yeah, so motion to adjourn, Brian,
Mutually agree to adjourn this hearing to April 1st.
to the Brian Kelly 20 to 30 County Road 39A to April 1st. Second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay.
Thank you all.
Yeah,
Appreciate
thank
it.
you.
Thank you all very much. Thank you, Steve, for being there. Appreciate it. See you folks.
So the next on the agenda is White Street, right? But that's adjourned, right, Alex? Did that
Yeah,
get
I believe
adjourned?
that's already been adjourned to the next meeting on February 5th.
Okay, so we're.
In the meantime, I know the applicant provided a revised survey, so the board should have that for review
Okay,
for that meeting.
perfect, thanks. 656 County Road 39, Buzz Chew.
Yes, this is a new site plan application that was distributed to the board. So I'm going to turn this over to you.
For the applicant, David Gilmartin Jr., Greenberg, Troy, Montauk Highway, and Bridgehampton. We represent Buzz Chew. We have submitted an updated site plan application. This board, in a different configuration in 1999, approved the existing site plan. And the dealership has operated for the 24 years since. Recently, there have become some issues with some tension with the neighbors. That has resulted in us trying to make a couple of small amendments to the site plan. The crux, I think, of the tension is activity that occurs in the back that borders on the subdivision behind us. In an effort to relieve that tension, there were a couple of changes to the site plan that we would request that the board approve. Right here, which is direct access to the back, and then there are two areas over here, if you can see those, are areas where deliveries that come after hours have the ability to access the rear. For approximately the past year, Buzz Chew has put out cones to prevent that access, and according to the management over at Buzz Chew, that's been pretty successful. One of the other challenges in having a dealership is cars break down and are delivered to the site. So if you see this area in here, those areas are reserved at night. So if tow trucks bring cars to the site, they are required to put them here and again, not access the back. A couple of the other smaller changes are there's some electric car charging stations, 2 here and then 1 here, that are proposed to meet today's demand for electric cars. So those are the changes to the plan. To accomplish that, this board would obviously have to approve those, and then there was a covenant that was placed on the property during the approval, and we'd have to amend that covenant. One of the things that we're told that the neighborhood does not like, and the neighbors behind, what impacts them is that our people that picked up our solid waste would come in very early in the morning and bang it around. So one of the things that we've proposed is that the garbage cannot be picked up anytime before 10 a.m. and then have to be done before 6. So there are some changes that we think will help. The other change that we'd like to see is be able to have deliveries after 6 p.m. One of the challenges is getting parts to the facility, and again, I believe that people were dropping parts in the back, and we would designate an area up front. There's a porte cochere right there. It would be a perfect spot for them to drop the parts off. Currently, the parts are dropped off in Riverhead and then vanned over to the site because the plant that delivers the parts is in Pennsylvania, and their drivers can't be on the road more than, I think, 9 hours. And the traffic out here prevents that from happening. So when 9 hours comes, they have to pull over. So we've had some challenges there. So we'd like to have the parts delivery done there. And that is the crux of what we're looking for.
Questions?
This is a so far satisfactory negotiation that we'll get presented with your clarity to approve. So we have to bless the change of the covenants.
You have to, yes, they're a party to the covenants. And you have to bless that change and approve the changes to the site plan.
But have you had an opportunity to see the letter from the neighbors?
I have not.
Okay.
Yeah, we got a letter
We
a
just
few
got a
hours
letter
ago.
that was sent to the village.
They didn't send it to me.
Yeah, I guess it was late breaking, but there are 10 provisions on here, so I think probably the board would be interested in how the applicant feels about their objections.
We'll take a look at them.
Yeah.
My client's pretty reasonable and has tried to accommodate some of the changes. The one thing that I would say that shouldn't go unsaid, although it's pretty challenging, is that our neighbors haven't exactly met their responsibility with the upkeep of the buffer area. And I've provided you with an analysis of that from Aris Design, where they've let that area go. It's impacted our landscaping, which I think then resulted in some of their complaints. So we'd like to see our neighbors start to maintain their area so it doesn't negatively impact our landscaping, and we think that would be pretty helpful as well.
Is that buffer area intended to be a visual buffer or a acoustic buffer or both?
Which buffer area?
Between you and the neighbors.
That's part of their subdivision.
But what are they trying? What is trying to be achieved there? Is it just a visual buffer, or are they actually trying to knock some of the sound down as well with a buffer?
You'd have to look at their subdivision. The history is interesting here because this area was a light industrial area.
Yeah.
The zone was changed. On the highway, it was highway business. And then behind was a subdivision that was done, so that
Southampton.
Yeah, that area was rezoned from a light industrial to a residential. I assume the subdivision had that to buffer between the highway business and the residential to the
And
rear.
along the property line there at the bottom of that, which I guess is south, is that a fence? Is that a stockade fence? What kind of fence is that? The heavy black line between the Buzz Chew and the
There's a
the
stockade
development.
fence
It's a stockade
that
fence.
was required that Buzz Chew put in.
Yeah. The other question I have is, if it's a after-hours delivery of a broken down car, the tow truck pulls in that right-hand driveway, right?
Mm-hmm.
To drop the car off along that right side boundary,
Correct.
property line.
Correct.
And that is that a perpendicular parking to the boundary, or is it head in, or is it parallel parking, or
It heads in.
And then how do they? But is there room there for a tow truck to turn around? Or is the tow truck backing up with the backup alarms?
There is. There is room for it, I'm told, to fit.
So they don't have to go into reverse. So the neighbors aren't listening to backup alarms at 2 a.m.
I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question. I can find that out.
Okay, I see someone nodding in the back that they're hearing backup alarms. So that's a That's a question. And I can't see it from here, but are there cones on the right side there?
The cones,
Can
there
you-
are cones here.
Yeah, those are cones, so nobody
And
can
then there are
go.
cones here and here.
So after hours, you can pull in that west entrance, but you're forced to go into the parking lot. You're forced to make an immediate turn to the left there, right?
Correct.
Or you can come in the other driveway on the right side of that, and you can only go down to those cones.
Correct.
Got it. Okay, that's helpful. Thanks. Any other questions at this end? All right,
The triangles where the truck parks.
got it. Okay, that's good eyesight.
One of the things I'm seeing here is that they're saying if the applicant revegetates the buffer, that the HOA would maintain it. So I know you haven't had an opportunity to see it, but
Well,
maybe it would be useful to see
That's-
the response and then.
and I'm happy, I mean, that's what public hearings are for, right? To have this out and have this discussion. We're happy to go.
Just for the record, this is a discussion, not a public hearing at this point.
Right, but
Okay.
at some point, you're gonna have to go to a
Exactly.
public hearing if we're gonna
Yeah.
get this changed, and I would anticipate that you would do that.
Yep.
Right. The owner of it has taken to quite expense, and I think, upwards of $50,000 to put additional trees in here, and it costs that, and then he's done the full irrigation and everything,
Yep.
and the overgrowth in that area is in the process of killing those trees off. That's a big area to ask him to revegetate and then they maintain. Their failure to maintain it has partially brought us to where we are today. And then to ask him to do to put that in, which we got a bid on a price to do a plan, and the bid was $25,000 to create the plan. I can't imagine what the installation would cost. So I think that's asking a little too much of a
Understood.
dealership to do
Understood.
that.
The area between the edge of the bottom edge of the parking lot and the stockade fence, is
So
that
from here
from there
to here,
to there? Is that, what is the zoning on that? Are there required setbacks for that? Or would you,
you can see it
I
on
can't
the
see.
plan. It says, I'm sorry, it's a 20-foot wide berm easement, and then there's a landscape plan which we did provide you, and so there's no activity behind the parking that lines the back of.
so zoning would prevent any activity between the edge of the parking lot and the stockade fence other than landscaping?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Correct understanding?
That is.
Yeah, got it. Okay,
And then that was built up in a berm, and then a fence put up
Understood.
to help screen.
okay.
I'm just wondering about other soundproofing, different kinds of fences or whatever. I don't know if anyone's ever looked into it or who would buy it and but what, on highways and things, sometimes there are walls that absorb sound, things like that. Has that ever been talked about or explored by anyone?
In general, but again,
Because plants,
We-
trees, it's.
we have an existing approval to operate with a permitted use on the site,
Right.
so.
And for the board's consideration, I'm looking at the county's GIS, and the vast majority of the stretch in between the residences in the back and the southerly end of Buzz Chew is property of the Dunes at Southampton Homeowners Association.
That's
That's several hundred feet wide at the very least, 3 acres in size. So we can't obviously obligate the Buzz Chew we can't even authorize them to enter on the premises of someone else, on someone else's property. So.
So, next steps here, what do we need to do next? Move this to a public hearing or?
Yeah, if the board wanted to schedule a public hearing, if they feel like there's enough information here in the submission, or if there's further information that they would need to schedule a public hearing, that's really the next decision point and the purpose of having a work session.
Does anyone feel they need more information on this?
Well, the only other thing that I looked at here is they're saying, the neighbors are saying they would like less parking spaces for overnight drop-off. Are the parking spaces legally mandated, or where did the number of parking spaces for drop-off, which?
I think we can accommodate that because
Okay.
it's, there may be more. what the challenge was to provide enough in case that there's emergencies. But if they feel there are too many, I don't think that there's been a time that they've had to use all of them. I think it's 1 or 2 a night is really sort of the norm. But I think we can accommodate
And that
that.
could, be in the covenant, potentially, yeah.
And the hours that you were looking to change for the waste removal and whatnot, was that in response to the neighbors'
Yes.
concerns about
Yeah.
the 8 o'clock being
Yep.
too early?
I suspect that knowing the garbage companies, that they were coming earlier than they were permitted to do, right? It happens at my house, so I assume that it would happen here. So, there was direct communication between Buzz Chew and his solid waste provider that this can't happen anytime before 10 o'clock. And we're willing to put that into a covenant to make sure that they follow it as well.
And the dumpster has been relocated, or will be relocated for the pickup? No? Okay, because they're asking for that in here, I don't know. If
Yeah,
that's-
I'm not sure where you could put it on this site.
They're saying, could it be in the front of the building?
Well, my experience is that this board and any other planning board.
The
does
village
not
code
want-
might prohibit it in front of the town. You can't have it on the street side, correct?
I'd have to check the village code before.
Okay.
Accessory structure.
In any event,
It's not good for
Yeah.
business.
It's not- that's what I was just thinking, it's not good.
yeah.
It's give and take.
Well, I mean, and this board has never, any board that I've ever been involved in has never put a dumpster in the front yard.
10 o'clock, that's it.
So my inclination, any other questions?
Did we have public commentary?
Yeah, sure.
So the dimension between the edge of the parking lot and the property line is 50 feet.
Yeah.
That's the transition yard that's required by the zoning ordinance.
Got it.
And that was what we discussed in the last case where they couldn't meet the transition that's required anytime you have a commercial property adjoining a residential property.
And that's 50 feet wide.
50 feet wide. Right?
Okay.
That's what the code
Yeah, that's
requires.
helpful. Thanks, Alex. What I'd like to propose, ordinarily, we don't have public comment at discussions like this. Public comment is for the public hearing. I'm happy to allow public comment tonight if you keep it to 3 minutes and whoever speaks doesn't repeat the person in front of them, okay? And our official timekeeper, let me introduce him, John Borkwin, will ring a bell when.
I'm Christopher Broish. I'm a resident of Meadowgrass. And Mr. Gilmartin did contact me in October. We spoke, and I called him again. Excuse me. And he didn't call me back, and I don't know why. I think one of the things I discovered was that an application like this is not prudent because there are pending charges at court. So you guys have a village code that was changed about a year ago that would preclude him from doing any of this.
What type of pending action?
In one particular case would be taking delivery of cars at night. And the cones that he talks about don't stop people from coming on the property. They come on the property and they just move the cones and conduct business. So if that law that they created is actually in force, this would be premature.
Do you have your
This is a
citations?
village
I'm
law?
sorry?
What, do you have the citations of the laws that you think?
I have it on my phone, I think.
It's a village law?
Yeah, I was told if you have any pending charges,
But charges
Or-
meaning litigation?
not
or
litigation, like
meaning
if you have a zoning, if
violations
you have a
or-
code enforcement
A
violation.
violation.
You took a delivery of a car and the police responded and let's say, excuse me, they wrote you a summons for taking a delivery at 7:15 in the morning instead of 8 o'clock. According to Mr. Gilmartin's phone call to me, he has 6. I don't know if you seem not to be aware of any of that.
No,
Okay. During his presentation, he left all that out. And I will, if I can, give me a moment, I'll look it up for you.
You do have about 10 seconds left. If you could, just for the record, identify your property address.
21 Meadowgrass Lane, Southampton, New York. And I have other residents that would like to make a public comment.
Okay, we're going to keep it to 3 minutes, I believe, as the chair said. And I'd just like to remind everyone in the room that a public hearing will be held, which is a more appropriate forum for lengthier statements.
There are charges pending in justice court, but that doesn't preclude me. And what I've been told in justice court is I got to come here and make the resolution of the cases, right? They won't resolve it in justice court until I come in and propose these changes. And there's been significant complaining on their side. I think we'll
So wait a minute.
submit our own complaint saying that they failed to maintain this area like they should have in their subdivision. And then we'll see them in court, and they'll come here and resolve that.
The justice court issue here is a code violation.
Yeah, it has nothing to do
That's
with
not
this
germane
process.
for our
But
board.
that doesn't,
It's nothing to do with this process.
That doesn't impact us at all.
And we'll put in a complaint in the morning
Okay.
to the building department
All
to
right.
take care of that area.
Next,
Let them maintain that.
did anyone else want to speak? Yep.
And if you could just identify yourself and your property address.
Natalie Cisco, 14 Meadowgrass Lane. I butt up against Buzz Chew. Just last Thursday, I was woken up at 3 o'clock in the morning again by loud slamming sounds. I believe it's deliveries. I've filled out a police report as usual. They have several violations ongoing. So I just want this letter recorded. So again, my name is Natalie Cisco. I'm concerned about the application of Buzz Chew Chevrolet. Today I draw your attention to section 116-37 of the Southampton Village Code, which presents crucial considerations for this application. This section clearly states that no building permit shall be issued for any project related to a property with pending violations, unpaid fines, or other monetary obligations owed to the village. Furthermore, it mandates that every department, board, committee of the village shall withhold the processing of any application if there is a violation or unpaid dues related to the subject property. In light of this, it's evident that Buzz Chew Chevrolet, currently having active violations, does not meet the criteria for application processing. This compliance issue with section 116-37 should be grounds enough to not entertain this application until these violations are resolved. Additionally, it's imperative to consider that Buzz Chew Chevrolet, operating in a highway business zone, received a special exemption use contingent on covenants with the homeowners association. These covenants are tied to the initial site plan. Therefore, any amendment to the site plan necessitates prior approval from both the Zoning Board of Appeals and the homeowners association. In conclusion, I urge the board to adhere to the requirements of this section and advise Buzz Chew Chevrolet to first rectify their violations and seek necessary permissions before reapplying. Therefore, I respectfully request the closure of this application, pending the completion of these essential prerequisites.
Thank you.
Can I respond?
Sure.
Apparently, Ms. Cisco is now the judge and jury on these violations because they're pending in justice court. There's been no outcome where it's been determined that there's been a violation. Secondarily, I'd say the accusations of our events, not of existing structures or anything on the site. So one has little to do with the other. We'll resolve these alleged violations when we get through this process. And we're happy to have the conversation about what needs to be done to make it a better site. But you know, this idea that they want a resolution, but they don't want this process to go forward makes very little sense. How are we supposed to resolve site plan issues if we can't push this forward?
Understood. Would you like to speak next, or who's next? Okay.
Good evening. My name is Richard DeMeo. I'm with the firm Campolo, Middleton, McCormick. I represent Laureen Enright and Vito and Rosa Rita of 16 Meadowgrass Lane and 18 Meadowgrass Lane, respectively. Not going to take too much time because I understand that you have received the letter. You're supposed to get here a bit earlier, but I guess it didn't. And I appreciate Ms. Bernstein for going through a large portion of the objections that were portrayed by my clients. The only thing I would request is that in addition to the letter, there was an enclosure with a thumb drive as well as photographs. And I would just respectfully ask that the board take consideration of those. Like a neighbor just said, the thumb drive has a video, and that video is not meant for the cinematography, but more so for the sound effects. And it's a significant issue for the clients and a lot of other neighbors. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time. My name is Shauna Byrne. I live at 25 Meadowgrass Lane, Southampton, New York. Along with my neighbors who are here tonight, there have been violations that have been ongoing with Buzz Chew since 1999. We are now 2024, it's 24 years. You have neighbors that have been awakened in the middle of the night. You have pending charges. I understand that the Buzz Chew dealership, and I understand that Mr. Gilmartin want to move this forward. That's fine and good, but there's a special exception that was granted for this particular site that was never adhered to. You have neighbors that are awakened in the middle of the night. I actually left my windows open one night just to see. I have too many golden doodles. I never understood why the two dogs were up between 2 and 4 and 4:30. I now do, because I heard it myself. The sound travels, it reverberates. I've been a neighbor since 1998. I'm entitled to quiet enjoyment. All of my neighbors are entitled to quiet enjoyment. If they can't adhere to the special exception, then everything stops. And candidly, this application should not be moved forward until they come to a resolution to move forward in a meaningful way. That's all I have to say.
The noise that you're hearing is, have you figured out what it's coming from? Is it car deliveries? Is it trash pickup? Is it disabled car deliveries? Is all of the above?
It's a loud banging. And candidly, the neighbors that abut this, I can't even imagine. Okay. And I'm all the way on a cul-de-sac, all the way up and around.
You said 25 Meadowgrass, correct?
Yes. I think it's 0.16, 16.1.
Okay. For the board's edification, that's over 650 feet away.
Yeah.
Has anyone ever gone out and seen what that banging
yes.
might be?
Natalie has, Lorene has. Lorene can't be here tonight.
But what is the banging?
It's a delivery. It could be a garbage, like
it's a door closing, or
it's not a door closing. It's a crashing. It's something being either delivered or dropped.
Are you sure that it's attributable to Buzz Chew?
Yes.
Yes, and the police have been involved and witnessed the deliveries happening, and this is ongoing.
So this is new automobile delivery that you're hearing?
Both,
in
and
the
the
middle of the night.
dumpster slamming, my house shakes. I mean,
so it's like is it the cars being taken off the trucks?
It's a compilation of different issues. Yeah. But here's the crux of it. You were granted a special use in 1999. You've been in existence for 24 years.
Just to jump in, 3 minutes is up.
Okay. Well, but again, there's been no resolution. So therefore, this should not even be heard at this point until those issues are addressed. This is a quality of life issue for people.
Understood. Thank you. Unrelated to this, I just got a text that someone's having difficulty zooming into this meeting. Is there any problem with Zoom? And no, not that you know of? Okay. All right, thanks. So some legal advice here.
So code enforcement issues are just that. Those aren't germane or relevant for our board. If the board would like to give the applicant a longer date in which the applicant feels would be sufficient time to resolve anything or to reach any sort of agreement with the Justice Court.
Well, the earliest we could schedule a public hearing would be late March at that meeting, right? Because of the notice?
Because of the notice requirement. So if the applicant, do you feel that's sufficient time, or would you like?
Yeah, we're not going to resolve the Justice Court cases until after this is resolved. That's been made clear to me in several court appearances.
And just to give the board an idea of what we can look at, site plans are something completely aside, as I said, from code enforcement issues. It deals with internal things such as parking, landscaping, lighting, the internal usage of the property and the fitness of the layout for that use. It has nothing to do with the local code, so long as everything meets local codes in terms of setbacks, parking calculations. So I would suggest the board do put it on for the March date. And Mr. Gilmartin, if you'd like to just keep us abreast of whatever your progress is with Justice Court.
Yes, so
That's why I asked my question. He's gonna come with a resolution that we have to approve for the use of the business. So he's gotta work that out, because we can't run
No,
his
no,
business.
it's all approved. There's an approved site plan here. It's our proposed changes that are under consideration. If there are suggestions or recommendations that the neighbors have to make it better, we'll certainly take those into account and try and come up with a better plan.
either before that public hearing or during that public hearing.
Right.
We could do
I
that.
suspect it'll be during.
I
Yes,
don't
sir.
know if it was said, but not by me, but I think 116-37C, have you read that?
I don't know off the top of my head, but I
Could you just check
can.
it while we're here, because you seem
Th-
all
th-
apt
this-
and
this is-
capable.
This is the same issue that was brought up by a prior speaker, where they're saying that we've been convicted of violations. That hasn't happened, right? There are no violations. There are accusatory instruments.
So they're complaints.
Yeah, but they have not been proven, and they haven't been.
Well, can we get an opinion about 11637 and whether that applies to this situation?
I'm not going to pull it up right now. I'll be honest, I don't believe it is germane. Site plan review is site plan review. I'm going to leave Mr. Gilmartin to handle whatever he may or may not have to handle with the zoning board, or
Remember,
with the
you're innocent
business.
until proven guilty. There's been no proof that
Understood.
there's a violation.
you.
So can we move
Understood.
forward with
Right.
the site plan?
Okay.
This is how we work these issues out. It's not, you
Yeah,
know,
I
this.
just would like to know if there's an open, what the language is that the neighbors are citing and whether there's any legal relevance to this.
I just gave you the legal relevance, right?
No,
Please.
just from our board attorney, I would like to
So
know if that
I think
applies.
you're saying that you don't know of any at this point in time. So
At this point in time, no, I don't know either
given,
way.
Given
Could you
that,
request a written opinion for him on 116-37?
not tonight.
No,
No, in the future, not now, in the
We don't-
future.
that wouldn't
It's not
be.
while you wait.
That would be a code enforcement question. I don't think it would be appropriate or even legal for me to render an opinion on that.
Yeah, so here's what we're gonna do. You're entitled to an expedient process here, right? So we're gonna schedule, I'm gonna make a motion to schedule a public hearing for that later March date.
March 4th.
March
No,
4th,
does that,
21 days.
It's
Yep.
the February 5th we can't do.
so it's March, it's March 4th. So we're gonna make a motion for the March 4th because legal counsel is giving us advice that, what we've heard is not enough to slow does not preclude an expedient process here. And if that changes, then we'll deal with it. So a motion for a public hearing on the Buzz Chew application for March 4th, March 4th. Second? Second, all of it in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay. Thank you very much. And, we'll, we've got the public hearing and over a month, 5-6 weeks to get some more detail on this in the time being. Thank you for your comments, public comments, appreciate it. And, thank you. The motion is to, no. Right, no one was opposed, right?
You said opposed.
I said opposed and no one said, yeah. Everyone, nobody
I
answered.
thought you were saying you were opposed.
No, I'm not opposed.
They say the
It's all
ayes, the ayes
have it. I missed that. Is there anything else on the agenda?
Mark, do we want to recall 22 Windmill Lane just in case anybody is on Zoom? I'm sorry, the applicant called me today. I wasn't able to return his call.
Is anyone else on Zoom?
Okay, so we have a Jesse Warren who is handed up.
Jesse Warren,
Okay. Well, let's listen to Jesse.
should we give him 3 minutes?
Alex, what about?
Yeah, let's.
Yeah, that's all.
And
Yeah.
oh, Victor, so once we conclude the work session items, there is an item for pre-application conference.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure that we've addressed all the comments for this, and there's no one here for
So let's
22
see if,
Windmill.
yeah, perfect. Thanks, Alex. Let's see if Mr. Warren has a comment on this Buzz Chew thing, because so let's hear him out.
He's letting him in. Just I need to know which application he's
I'm pretty sure it's this Buzz Chew, because I think Jesse's
Well,
a
I'm
neighbor.
sure he'll tell us in his own words.
Jesse.
Good evening, everybody.
Hi.
It's nice to see everybody. I see some new members as well, so I just wanted to thank everybody for their public service, especially the new members, but some of the existing members as well who've served for quite some time. I'm here tonight. I live at 6 Potato Field Court, and while this issue doesn't affect me directly, Laureen Enright, who I know this issue does, had a unfortunate death in the family, and she asked me as one of her neighbors to help speak on her behalf. So I did want to bring to the attention once again to the board section 116-37C of the Southampton Village Code. I know this village code quite well because I helped write it, and every current member of the village board also voted for it on a 5-0 basis. And while there are some discrepancies over a pending versus existing violation, the law does include pending violations. So if there are in fact pending violations on this property, they would not be able to move forward with a public hearing or even process the application. And this is black letter law. It's in our village code. If the the planning board attorney, obviously you might not want to opine on this in public session, but you can simply read it just so that you're familiar with this section of the code that clearly states that any pending violations, et cetera, would not allow an application like this to move forward. I obviously don't want to take a position on this, but clearly want the village planning board simply to follow the law. And that's first and foremost very important. But Lorraine also brought to my attention that she's constantly disturbed by noise and other potential issues. And I believe that when the Zoning Board of Appeals had issued its special exception permit, the applicant had to agree, again, if I'm incorrect, anyone could feel free to correct me, but had to agree to certain criteria and covenants and obviously a site plan review. So I think it's critical that code enforcement go and just make sure that obviously this is in compliance with the current site plan review is in compliance. But first and foremost, that's not even important at this time. What's important is that the village planning board follow the village laws that are in place. And so I implore this planning board to make sure that they are absolutely sure that they are not in violation of the village code that exists and that was put into law. So thank you very much. I'm happy to answer any questions on this. After all, again, I'm intimately familiar with this law.
That was 3 minutes, Chair.
Yeah, okay, thanks, Jesse. We'll figure this out, and, if we'll figure this out. And
We can look at
this. If we have to adjourn that.
And Mr.
scheduled
Mr.
meeting.
Gilmartin, if you'd like to just keep me abreast of, if you have anything to submit to the board, obviously between now and March 4th.
Yeah.
The distinction here is that these are accusations, right? They're accusations made against an individual who is accused of delivering the things at night when it was clearly a company
This
that
is black letter law. This is not about
So
accusations.
look, I don't want to debate it here tonight, okay?
I listened to him. I had patience enough to listen to that drivel. Why should I be cut off by him?
Because we're limiting it to 3 minutes. And
Well,
I'm the applicant, right?
Okay, fine.
Right? That this is an accusation. The speaker is saying that there's something that it's an actual violation. It's not, right? And we have a very good defense to this. And this is a difficult situation. It's going to be resolved by this board in a site plan with the owner and the neighbors. That's how it gets resolved. To insert yourself into the process and say it shouldn't happen is contrary to what the outcome they're looking for. I don't understand it whatsoever.
Understood.
And I expect better.
We're going to comply with the law, but none of us, well, some of us are lawyers, but we're going to, but we need to review this. We need to get advice from our counsel, and when we get the advice, we'll proceed accordingly. That's all we can offer. Okay? Thank you.
I do like it that the residents seem to be more prepared than the attorneys in this situation. So I always love to see when people do their homework.
Yeah.
Former mayor.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.
Thanks. What's the last one, Alex? Victoria?
Yeah, I don't know if anyone was here for 22 Windmill Lane, or if the board had any questions on the latest submission for that.
Good night. Thank you again.
Or if it makes sense to discuss it. You might remember that's the site plan review on Windmill Lane, where they're proposing to a rehabilitation and an addition on that very old building there that's in the back, in the back, with a state of disrepair. That's an application that will also need to go to the Zoning Board of Appeals for certain relief of parking. Most buildings in that area don't meet their on-site parking requirements. There's also certain issues of lot width, and also the Village Business District has a rather unique maximum front yard setback rather than a minimum. And because of historic preservation concerns, it's not clear whether that can or should be met. So there's certain items that the zoning board will probably have to opine on. That's probably the applicant's next step, is to go to the zoning board. But in the meantime, the board may want to continue to review the site plan application. It probably makes sense for this board to be lead agency and complete the environmental review process. But that's the status of that.
To me, that is the major part of that location. This is at the edge of the swamp. And somebody said, I heard it, they got complete approval from Suffolk County Water. They're all set for drainage and everything. I haven't, I guess I've been to the file, but I don't think they're absolutely set from a drainage point of view. These are guys right on the edge of where Lake Agawam used to be. And they're on the water, and how you, it's gonna be a real engineering feat to do a lot of bathrooms and everything else, but.
Well, septic and drainage are two different questions, right?
Kathy may already know if Suffolk County Water has already approved this, that's news to me.
I don't think they have, right?
No, they then, and it's the Suffolk County Health Department has not issued an approval, but they, and they would require a secret determination from this board likely before the Suffolk County always has
we
the
would
local.
go first before them.
Well, for the SECRO at least,
Yeah.
and then, but as far as drainage goes, they're proposing a system in the back to divert all the flow, which would be in the area where the parking is now.
Yeah.
And that would be in these like chambers that are it's a shallow system because they do have high groundwater there, of course.
Yeah.
So there is a lot more engineering work that has to be done, but the first step would be to make sure, to see if the zoning board would approve the relief that's required.
Yeah, I think that's Alex is trying to
They go first.
on the record.
That's the big
that,
issue. Drainage.
We want to come up with a roadmap here. Stop number one on this road trip is the Zoning Board of Appeals. We're designated as the lead board, so we'll manage that secret once the zoning board issues are
the
addressed.
zoning board may ask this board it may make sense for this board to make the determination so that the zoning board can proceed, which is why they've started here and why site plans typically start with the planning board. But at this phase, it's evolved to a point where probably this board could classify the action. I believe, Kathy, this is an unlisted action, and that there's no need for a coordinated review. So this board could make those determinations, and it may make sense to adjourn this at least to the next meeting and make those determinations then, and we'll hear back when the applicant is able to apply to the zoning board.
So we wanted to make that determination at the next meeting, or?
I think it makes sense. And the other thing is that the applicant had noted in their memo that they included a full EAF. And as far as I could tell from the files, there was not one provided. So that would be outreach to the applicant.
Yep.
And just to request that full EAF, then we can review that. And I don't know. I don't think there's any reason why the board couldn't tonight say, we're lead agency under SECRA and classify this as an unlisted action.
Do I need a motion to do that? Do we need to motion that we're the lead agency?
Yes,
So
we need to. Well, we'll draft a resolution when the time comes. We typically do a motion to approve a resolution accepting lead agency, and then we'll do a subsequent motion, sometimes the same night, sometimes down the road, making your finding as a secret, type 1, type 2, or unlisted.
Okay, so what are we motioning tonight with respect to lead
accept
agency?
lead agency.
It sounds like we have enough information to make a motion. accepting lead agency.
substance,
And
just-
we've been advised that it's of the type of action unlisted.
Yeah, and that could be
action.
subject to written, a
Subject to
written
a-
resolution.
I
for
would,
next
yeah,
time.
I would counsel, let's do subject to written decision.
Okay.
Assume lead agency, subject to written decision.
So do you want to articulate the motion, John?
So motion to assume lead agency in regard to this application pending a written decision by this board.
Okay, that's the motion. Do we have a second?
Seconded.
Thank you. All in
You bet.
favor?
We'll get it.
Aye.
We're
Okay.
stuck with it anyway.
Okay.
So
And
John
then-
can't
and
make the motion though, so you.
No, he
you
So I made the
You
motion.
made
That's-
the motion.
that's
That's
your-
what he
Thank you.
said.
He's motion, I'm
And
second.
in the meantime, we'll track down an EAF
Yeah.
for the board.
And we also need a motion to adjourn this to the next meeting, right?
Yeah, I think.
And while we're still on the record, if I may add something, I did just take a very brief peruse of the village code in 11637C, which former Mayor Warren did bring up, reads in entirety, no building permit shall be issued for any project related to any property in the village which is the subject of pending violations, unpaid fines, or other monetary obligations owed to the village. So there's two distinctions there. A building permit is not a site plan. Site plans are creatures of the New York State village law. That's not germane. And no one has proven that there are pending violations. And on top of that, how do we know that these violations were assessed against Buzz Chew or against bulk carriers? So there's quite a few holes there. I can discuss this in detail later on, but that's where I will leave things for the evening.
Okay. Thank you. Second motion to move this. What's the name of this one?
This is 865 Merrick Holdings
To move
LLC.
865 Merrick to adjourn this to 865 Merrick to our next session.
That's Monday, February 5th.
February 5th. Second.
Second.
Thank you. In
Aye.
favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes carry it. And then final motion, if anyone have anything else?
We're sorry, we have one more for discussion. It's a pre-submission conference. So the board might remember that all of the land use boards have agreed on a case-by-case basis to hear pre-submission conferences from prospective applicants. The idea is that you can hear from applicants in the preliminary or conceptual phase of the process, give some informal feedback to give them some direction that helps shape their application so they don't spend a lot of time and money going down the wrong path.
Right.
And we've generally found that this has been a helpful exercise for all the board, and it's a great opportunity to raise questions and concerns early in the process when they can still be addressed.
When is it done? During meetings?
It's usually done at the end of a public meeting, and so this one we had asked the chair to put on for 51 to 53 Hill Street, it's a property owned by Victoria Khan adjacent to the movie theater. The prospective applicant had also gone to the Board of Zoning Appeals for a pre-application conference to discuss possibly the relief that they would need from that board. Likely, if they did apply, they would have to come to this board for a site plan review. So they're here to discuss the application. If you'd like to come up.
Oh, perfect.
Yes.
Oh, good.
Yeah, they can tell you about it even in more detail.
So sorry.
No. This is my car agency. This is where I bought the first Mercedes. This is a nice car agency.
It used to be a car dealership.
This what?
Yeah, this is the Mercedes dealer.
Next to the theater.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's facing the board. All take it up on
All the automobiles were sold down in the there was a swamp. And all
Yes.
when cars came in, everything was down Job's Lane and on Hill Street.
Hi. Sorry. Yes, I'm Ed Parker. I'm with 1100 Architect, and I'm here to talk to you a little bit about 51 Hill Street and potential changes that might be made to that property. The broader context is that my office is working on the theater for the current owners of the theater. And I'm sure I will also be meeting with you about that property before long in a formal sense. Alex and I spent some time together today with his guidance. It's been very helpful to try to understand the process. But the reason I'm here about 51 is because that property, that adjacent property, their ownership of the theater is considering potential to purchase that and kind of make a little bit more of a campus for the theater to have a food component essentially. That's not we evaluated that for the theater itself beyond the concessions that it has historically had, and quickly surmised that with the health department, it's going to be practically impossible to really put food in the theater because of the site drainage and septic situation. So the exploration right now is whether or not it's viable to do something like that in the adjacent property and potentially have some synergy between them. So I think the idea with this is just to show you what that looks like and to garner feedback and some direction on your thoughts on that. And I do not have it with me really, but we can also, if this is informal, I think we're...
Yes, this is a discussion. This isn't. This doesn't trigger any sort of binding obligation on either us or you.
Right. We can also talk about the theater property if that is helpful for the discussion about 51 Hill. So 51 Hill is just west of 43, which is the theater. Currently, it has a pretty much hardscape back patio. There are 2 tenants inside, radio station and a engineering company. And the idea would be to turn the back half of it essentially into wet store, which would have limited number of seats inside and change the exterior rear yard into a softer set of terrain that's more like a pocket park, essentially, that potentially has some dialogue with this building. So my understanding of what this board is mostly interested in is the site plan itself, cross-access, and so forth. So I'm interested to understand how you perceive something like this. With the zoning board, they have to give us a special exemption for the proposed change of use, essentially, even though it's part of what's allowed in the village business district. So that's what we would apply for there. And also, I'll note that there are currently no parking spots associated with the building. We've done parking calculations, and essentially it would be the same amount of required parking spots for the lot that currently exists, but there's not really a good way to access parking. So that's another piece that zoning would have to give us a variance for, essentially.
Questions?
What would be the potential way then to have access to the parking?
I mean, I think the initial ask is this is a existing condition that is non-compliant, and we would want to maintain that. I mean, there is a large parking lot here that potentially could support that use, but these are not shared property, and there are, I would say, grandfathered scenarios on both sets of property. And if we were to co-join them, then I think a lot of that would probably...
Do you know if there were any easements recorded at any point against either property allowing for cross-access or even contemplating future cross-access?
Not as far as I know. Especially with the theater, the paperwork with the village is extremely light. So, I mean, I think we're not planning on doing a lot to change the parking lot, or, there are some minor things in the exterior. As I said, we will be in front of you to talk about that in particular. But there are no easements that I know of that have been recorded, nor is there a certificate of occupancy or any old paperwork or a site plan or anything that's been approved for, as far as I know, for that property.
Easements occasionally might not show up in village records, but you can also look in your client's title report, and typically they will show up there.
And in this concept, we're considering that people would be able to walk down that alley adjacent to the movie theater to access that open space, right?
That's true, yes.
There would have to be some element of cross-access, right? And through the parking lot as well, that people would be able to enter that way.
Yeah, I mean, right now, there is access to, what's it, 71, the neighbor? There's also access
Down the road.
to the street
Windmill Lane.
through 2 driveways, or these are parts of other parcels property. I don't know if those are also
There's,
legally
there's
recorded.
only one to Windmill Lane.
Yeah, 71 access is likely to go away, though.
Well, we think that 71 is going to make a new application to this board, and we suspect that cross-access will be a requirement of a future site plan approval.
Okay.
Yeah, and
You
there
mean
is
the
a new
wraparound.
application in
There
with
is, and
zoning.
in their current proposal that's pending before the trustees, they are showing they're maintaining that cross-access.
Yeah, they may have
So
slid
that's
it.
a change from what.
They were gonna move it, they were gonna move it to the rear. back to the
Yeah,
rear.
I think it may be slightly adjusted from
Yeah.
where it is now, but that'll be a good
It'll
opportunity
move to the
for
rear.
applicants
It's
to
moving to the rear, I
coordinate.
think.
Yes, but and then so that's vehicular cross-access, and yes, there is.
Well, there's something in between the theater and and my car dealer
Right here, yes,
Yeah.
there's an alley essentially.
There's an alley
that
to back to the parking.
would be maintained also, yes, and that would provide access
Yeah.
to the rear of the building. I mean, yeah, so there's
What's in the back of the
pedestrian-
building now? Is it, that was the old parking for the old car
Here?
dealership with the stuffs, they subdivide it and put tenants in front like the
You know, right now
station and
it's just it's like a brick patio.
in the back, yeah,
So
okay.
what is the intention with that brick patio? Is that going to be overflow seating for the wet space? Or is that just like a public seating area?
Yeah,
External bar.
What does
Yeah.
wet space mean? I'm sorry, I'm
Well,
not
so
sure.
for the health department, they have different classifications of restaurants essentially, and I'm going to say it wrong. It was the wet. It's not a restaurant per se, but it allows you to make food and serve food
Yeah,
up
if you're
14 people.
16 seats or less, you're
Yeah.
a wet space, and you can do it's like a
It's
mini,
out- it's-
mini restaurant deli.
July and August outdoor dining.
Yeah. Although there
I
are
think.
other outdoor dining parameters, right? That zoning and the health department both care about. So probably right now this is showing seating outside that could be a park scenario. We may remove the tables and just show benches or something like that, because I think if we do outdoor dining, it's going to be a very limited number also.
But you do
Because-
indoor dining.
Yes.
You
Oh,
would
no.
do
Some.
in the wet.
But
Year round.
outdoor
And then
dining
you
would,
have-
sorry, Willa, go ahead.
Oh, no, is the intended format going to be something like Sag Harbor Cinema where it's a membership to eat at the restaurant, or is it the intention it's gonna be for the public or people going to the movies, or?
The intention, to my knowledge, is that it's a restaurant that serves the campus, so to speak, not that it's a private club or something of that nature. If that's
So
what you mean.
do you have to go to a movie and then you can eat there, or just anyone can go eat there, but it's not physically connected?
Correct.
to the movie theater?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I do think so. There is an idea that in the theater there's currently 4 cinemas that they're all being maintained and renovated, upgraded really. One of them, the one that's adjacent to the rear yard, we may propose, if this idea makes sense, to put some large openings that could be opened up so that space could function as more of a flexible space. It could show movies, but it could also be something that you could have town events or other things.
Receptions,
Exactly.
walk back and forth.
And then you could have access to the outdoor space. And potentially, I would think in those scenarios, the restaurant may be able to support food service for something of that nature.
But you said you might dial back the outdoor tables. What would drive you to that decision? Is it
It's a numbers like when we look at like what the building department allows, it's like a fraction of the number of the seats that are inside. So, or you can do it with the health department allows you a little bit more flexibility. You can have like 2 seats outside or 1 seat inside, and any kind of mix that you want. So potentially we could have all the seats outside for a wet store, but then you wouldn't have any inside. So
The
unless
zoning ordinance regulates outdoor dining very specifically in
Yeah.
terms of
It's
the
the
number
back of the
seats,
driver's seat.
and seats often carry parking requirements and things like that.
that's true too. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think it'll be more for the potential for a congregation and and then use with the building as opposed to seats in that area. because of the outdoor dining stipulations, although they are typically associated with an existing restaurant, and this is not that scenario. There's also probably plenty of restaurants around that have a lot more outdoor seating than they have indoor seating. But.
So to answer your original question,
yes.
I think the criteria fall into two buckets, right? There's the zoning bucket, which is outside our purview and is all ZBA.
Yes.
And then there's the planning aspect of it, but you got to stop at zoning first before we can vote on it, because any variances you need would have to be granted by zoning. I think we saw this application. I think we have a little bit of a pulse of the board here, but adding restaurant space to the village, particularly in conjunction with the theater, I think everyone here would be really excited about if you can make it work. I think when it comes to us, there would be a secret review on this, correct? We would be the lead agency on that. And I think the big part of our focus on that is going to make sure that, when you put a wet space or a restaurant or whatever you end up with, that we're going to be very focused on making sure that the environmental impact is, works within the village parameters or what the village is trying to achieve.
It's on the Agawam
Because
Green.
that's a sensitive area.
Yeah, and I have
So if
been.
you can check that box.
Okay.
Yeah,
I've been talking to the Rayner Group about both sites for
Yeah.
a long time now. And they did have an initial sketch that I believe I included.
Anybody disagree with that summary? You raise your hand, right? Everybody's good with that? Okay.
It's on the Agawam Drain.
All right.
That's actually another issue. I mean,
The Agawam Drain.
the health department limitations on the occupancy are also,
Right.
cause issues with a lot of outdoor dining, I think,
Yeah,
because there's not a lot of flow off.
Right, and we understand that, in the village, in that area, in this environment, and given what, that we're trying to do to like Agawam, that's a very sensitive issue, so, we've got to, that's gonna get a lot of focus.
Okay.
In the consideration
here. Did you find that when they built the theater, that what is the sewage septic situation? Is there a lot of capacity because it had 4 theaters and hundreds of people, or is it in the state of disrepair and needs to be redone, or do you know the state of all that? Because that's a big use when you have 4 movie theaters that are packed with people, so maybe it's got a lot of capacity. I don't know.
I'm not gonna. I'm glad this is informal. I will have my numbers with me. My recollection of the evaluation is that the capacity is reasonable, and from our knowledge, the system is intact. I don't think, as I recall, I don't think that it's a huge capacity. There's something about the way that movie theaters calculated for how many fixtures are required that's pretty limited, actually, compared to some other uses, as I recall. But I will say that the occupancy, we're substantially reducing the occupancy, so I think the load is going to be substantially less than it used to be, which will help with parking and also probably with septic. It used to have almost 1,000 seats in 4 theaters, and I think that we're going to be, I feel like we're going to be around 600 or something like that. Is they're making the seats bigger and trying to, put in modern kind of contemporary experience for the, the way that a cinema will work.
Yeah, this is good, right?
I think it's exciting, the plan.
Yeah.
So you're evaluating whether to buy that property.
Because, the village in that area is net down a restaurant now that Plaza Cafe is moving to Le Chef, and Le Chef closed, so,
Yeah.
More good restaurants. Everybody here
We're always
appreciates
losing
that.
restaurants.
There are 16 restaurants.
We all like to eat.
That's it.
I've
All
only
these
eaten a
people.
few.
And they all go bankrupt in the winter.
Well, they don't charge too much, too.
But they try to make it up in the summer because they go bankrupt in the winter.
Is that helpful?
I think so, yes. I mean, I think the only thing that I would hope to understand, just if it's possible, because I do understand what I need to do with zoning, and I also understand going to them first makes sense, is just from a access standpoint, are there, the points that I see right now are there is some sort of access essentially from this parking lot. There's pedestrian access from the side, and there is currently also this small kind of access point that goes from the neighbor property into this property through this property. And I'm just wondering, and then there's also some cross access from this area to here in a couple locations. I'm just wondering if there's anything about that if that's sufficient, if it's too much, if these are things that you would want me to change or do something with.
I think it's, you know, if it's safe and it's accessible and it's, you know, I don't know what the terrain is like there, but is it safe to, you know, walk? Is it all one level and, you know, things like that?
ADA compliance leaps up at the last minute, which you gotta.
Yes, it is a little bit steep back here.
Yep.
Actually, in the proposal that we'll make for 43 Hill Street, we're going to rectify that. We're going to flatten that out and make the ramp work in the back.
Yeah, I don't think, and I mean, look, we haven't looked at this extensively because it just came to us recently, but as long as it's code compliant, right? I don't think any of us have seen anything that causes any concern with the plan now. So if the zoning board grants the variances and, you know, but from what we see now, based on quick discussion, you know, we don't see any problems.
Okay.
I'm curious, you would just keep the same leases going or something, or eventually take over the whole building?
This building?
Uh-huh.
The radio
when
station.
you're buying.
Yeah, as I recall, I think that lease has got like another 5-7 years or something like that. And right now, the use doesn't seem so divergent really from like an arts and culture use. Right. So everything's subject to change, but my understanding is that it would just keep the tenant for the time being. And if it is a wet store location with a limited number of seats, so you don't really need to use the whole space for that anyway. At least the plan in the near term would be to keep it as is. I don't know what the plan would be down the road. As I said, this is exploratory kind of for this use.
Yeah, but I don't think we see anything problematic at this point, if it meets code.
Some of the board members might remember on an earlier version of 71 Hill Street, one of the requirements was that there be 7 points of pedestrian cross access, including to this property. So the staircase that's currently there, that would be rehabilitated in this proposal, would be a nice way to connect those properties, especially where we know, shared parking being very important to the business district. Yeah. And then having sites function, especially when not every site can contain on-site parking, we think is mutually beneficial.
Yes, definitely.
Okay.
So, next steps for us?
I think for 51 Hill, my next step is, now that I've met with you and I understand your perspective, is kind of summarize things for the client side in a matrix with probabilities of approval, essentially, and then I think they'll move to the next step with the application.
So do we want to adjourn this until? No, it's just discussion.
Discussion.
Yeah.
Their next step is
mere discussion.
Will be to file a formal application.
Okay.
And we'll discuss at the time if it makes sense to come here for secret purposes or to start with the zoning board. Certainly, the zoning board, has a lot of pressing issues that would probably need to resolve before a final determination. But we would discuss all that when we have an actual application.
I would say, generally speaking, they seemed favorable also to the
I think
idea.
that's fair.
Okay, good.
So I think the hope would be we'll do that. We will probably see you for the theater property formally before that, is my instinct. But I will, talk with Alex some and figure out what makes the most sense for all of these different things, so as to not waste time. And
great. Thank you. And apologize about missing you at the end there.
Oh no, that's fine.
So we didn't mean to cut you off. We just didn't, we didn't know. So
not a worry.
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. That was
Thank
good.
you all very much.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your patience.
Motion to adjourn for this evening.
So moved. I'm happy to adjourn.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you,
This is
Kathy.
good. Thanks.
Great. We'll see everybody
Alex,
February
thank you.
5th.
Yeah.